Ok.
Quando ti vedi parti.
Hi everyone, good evening. My name is Claudio Januario and I'm here to introduce you to MITB, Mastering in the Box, a book from Marco Massimi, sound engineer, mastering engineer, lecturer in electroacoustics at the Music Conservatory of Frosinone, lecturer in post-production and mastering at the Tor Vergata University of Rome. Hi Massimo, how are you?
Fine, fine. What about you?
I'm fine, I'm fine. I hope everyone is okay. And we are going to talk about this fantastic book. And it's not very easy today to find a book about mastering and a book long, about 500 pages. This book does not only talk about mastering, but it explains various procedures, and it's full of examples. And now Marco is going to talk about it. What's the structure of the book, Marco?
Well, the book is made in layers, we can say. You can read a book as a passionate, as a professional, or as a student or academic student. So it depends on the level you want to learn. You can use the book in various ways. The book is made of theory and practice together, always. Every concept you learn, you have a test, an assignment to do. There is also a little test on, at the end of every chapter to verify the learning procedure you made.
Okay, I see there's something called learning agenda. Can you explain that to our viewers?
Yes, at the beginning of each chapter, you had to define your goals, what you will learn, what you will learn to do, what's the concept you are applying in theory and in practice during the chapter. The books is made of online section you can download from the Contemponet website. It contains about 200 audio examples and presets, plugin presets, master section presets. You can work too.
Okay, Marco, excuse me. Victor says that he can't hear you loud as my microphone. Can you please?
Okay, I'm gonna. I hope now it's better.
I'm going to ask the guy. Okay.
Okay. Okay.
Okay. Now I've asked. I'm waiting for an answer. Okay.
Okay.
So you will now drive us through a sort of mini lesson based on the book. Is that all right? Is that
Yes. Yes.
okay.
We can talk about the basic concept of the book. What is mastering? Why mastering? What kind of processing does it require? So we can say that mastering is a post-production processing. It begins when the mixing it's finished. It's the last part of the production. the processing, the mastering affects all the sound content. We had to use a different approach when mastering than in mixing, because in mixing we can be maybe more creative, and in mastering we must be most conservative. We must emphasize, we can say, the quality already present in the mix. Using some, for example, for spectral editing, filtering and equalization, a subjective approach. It's a different kind of analysis too. If we have a mood sound, usually we are forced to put some high frequencies in the content, but in mastering we have to analyze the mood and discover which frequencies is disturbing the balance of the mix and attenuate. And we have also
so it's more a job about gluing together some music, some different songs for a CD, rather than repairing errors made in the mix. Is that right?
You can't create quality, the quality that does not exist. You can you can keep the quality intact if you are good. You can correct some little errors in mastering. For example, if you have a rumble in a recording that the mix engineer doesn't hear because of the poor listening system. Most of the production nowadays are made in home studios or project studios with no subs for low frequencies. The subs is not used for special effects, but to hear some frequencies in a low frequency range. So maybe in a classical recording, it's common here cars, trains, rumbles that interfere with the sound. So in that case, we can repair that error. Some other not. It depends on the error. Okay. The reason why we mastering can be we can agree with some reason and not with others. Maybe we agree that the uniformity in listening to the track list is essential in an album, even if nowadays the album is a concept that is going to be it's not so common. Today, the master work is done on the single song and single hit. Not on the album. The compatibility across different listening systems, we cannot be agree with this concept, but we have to do it. We know that nowadays the common listening systems are smartphones, Bluetooth speakers, more stereo system or mono system. So we have to be sure that our content is adequate to also to these platforms. Not made for these platforms, but compatible with these platforms. The error correction and the editing is a phase in which we make fade in, fade outs. Little adjustments on mathematical errors, sometimes more than sound errors. The tracklist creation is a process that is made usually before the songs come to the mastering room, but sometimes the mastering engineer can advise the producer, for example, on the fact that there are two songs on the same BPM, put one after the other, with a pause that is a multiple of the BPM. So in that case, the two songs appears as a single song. Worse is if the songs are in the same key. Sometimes it happens. So the mastering engineer can ask the producer if it's intentional that list, or if it's the case to change the order of some songs.
Okay. Listen, Marco, we have our first question. Gianluca asks you if what kind of audio monitor you advise for starting mastering work. What kind of audio monitor? He doesn't ask about brands or kind of audio monitor.
I'm not going to talk about brands right now. Anyway, if you approach to mastering, it's suppose you already have a mixing room. The mixing listening system is not so different from a mastering if you have a good listening system. One thing that is important is you have to cover all the frequency range with your listening system. So you need a subwoofer, or two subwoofer, one for each channel, and a good system for the higher frequencies. On this argument, there are many publications you can read on. Also, in my book, I do not talk about listening systems. I talk about the processing. But you can, for example, take 2 or 3 songs you know very well, and you know the sound now once very well, and going in a professional mastering studio and listen to that song, and remember the feeling, listen to that song. Then go in your studio and listen to your system, and notice the difference. The differences between the two. If you listen that song the way you remember, the feeling you remember, maybe your system, it's okay. This is a simple test you can do before working on the audio optimization, on sound optimization, on the peak noise measurements, and other things. Just use the feelings the first time.
Okay.
Then metadata and BQ codes. The metadata, we can describe the metadata as a data that describes other data. It's like have a bottle of beer in a shop. We can define the bottle as a container, the beer as the audio data, and the metadata as the label on the bottle. The metadata doesn't change the content into the container, just describes the content. So if you put a tomatoes label on a beer bottle, the inside remains beer, it stays beer. The the metadata in the audio streamings can be named as tags, or MP3 tags, or cart metadata, or BWF metadata. Depends on the file you are coding. In the compact disc, the metadata are known as P and Q codes for for the time codes and track list structure and metadata, and then we have the R to W codes for enhanced metadata, always in the compact disk. Let's change the slide. So what processing we use during mastering? We use almost the same processing we use in mixing, but in a different way. Digital processing, obviously. Digital processing may be a processing of metadata of for example, dithering, spectral processing on frequency domain, dynamic processing on amplitude domain, spatial processing on the image, on sound image, stereophonic image if it is stereo, or surround image if it is multi-track. This book covers the surround mastering too. There is a chapter on the surround mastering, and
I think I have to. I'm asking you something. As the book is entitled MITB, and I see all this kind of processing that you're describing, what's the difference between mastering in the box and out of the box?
Okay, the power of nowadays computer let us make very fast and sharp and precise calculations, so we can emulate hardware, analog hardware and circuits. There are two completely different ways of working in the box or out of the box. I don't see one is better than the other. But each one has got its own characteristics and specifications. For example, we can record sound through an analog system. For example, I'm changing the slide. For example, this way we use a multi-track tape recorder, microphones, preamplifier, and we don't leave the electric domain.
Mm-hmm.
The advantages of this technique is that we make no conversions. A conversion is never transparent. Is never invisible. A conversion always modifies the sample, the signal. Sample, the word sample, it means example. A sample is an example of the original sound. It can be a very accurate example if you use higher sample rates and higher bit numbers. But it's always an example. So in this case, we made no conversions. So the domain still remains electrical. And the disadvantage of this technique, we have no editing, no advanced editing possibilities. So we need very good musicians. In this case, we have a little more noise than the digital production, but you know, it depends on the musical style you are recording. If you record, for example, classical music, if you want to record the Bolero of Ravel, you need a very, very low noise level, because the Bolero starts with a very, very pianissimo and end with a fortissimo. So you need an high dynamic range, a low noise level. But if you record pop, rock, you can use the analog. In the digital recording, we have at least one conversion. We have to convert the audio from analog to digital. But we have enhanced editing possibilities. And we have a low noise level. So, in this case, we can say that the numeric domain has its advantages. When we mix in analog domain, we don't leave the domain. So we make no conversions. If we print a vinyl, we made one conversion if we print a CD. But one conversion is acceptable. We can accept. Or we can have the in-the-box mixing. And in the box, we make one conversion if we print a vinyl or a CD, because we converted before. But the domain remains numeric, so we don't make a lot of conversions in this case. Or we can use...
Excuse me, Marco. Someone is asking if this video will stay online. I didn't ask you before. Will be online at the end of the presentation?
Yes, a little editing and I'll put online.
Okay, I'll answer it again.
Or we can use an hybrid configuration. The hybrid configuration is the one we see on the cover of the audio magazines. So artists in wonderful studios with wonderful consoles on boards. But from a mathematical approach point of view, we can see that in the hybrid configuration, we made one conversion to convert and record on Pro Tools, Cubase, what you use, from analog. It's one conversion. Then we have to mix with an analog mixer and another conversion. Then you have to print a master, and then it's another conversion from the analog console to the file. Then go to the mastering studio. And if you want to do a mastering, an analog mastering, another conversion. And then print a CD or a streaming file, another conversion. So 5 conversions, from a mathematical point of view, it's not so good. So if you want to keep your chain electrical, keep it electrical. If you want to keep numerical, keep it numerical. Just avoid too much conversions. Anyway, you can't make a picture for the audio magazines in that case. The artists in the wonderful studios with wonderful mixer resemble to me a writer that makes a picture with his pen, with this with the computer keyboard. Just use your ears and then your brain to think about what you are doing.
About using your ears, I'm asking you this question too. Do you find yourself more comfortable if you close your eyes while you have to pay attention to a master, or you just feel the same with your eye closed or open? Because personally, I like to listen with my eye closed.
To me, it's almost the same. Not because I'm insensible, but because I listen to a lot of mastering and mixing, and so I have an idea of what is the sound just after some seconds of listening. obviously with a good listening systems. I use the headphone only for reference or only for listening to some sound in particular, or correct some errors. But when you mix and when you master, you have to use a speaker system.
Okay. Now we have another question from Andrea. Let's say, hi Massimo, the main problem is listening to the mix into the speakers in a studio, but then understanding how to let it play in a good way in a cell phone, obviously. Is that I think is one of the questions that everybody is asking, approaching mastering is asking.
Yes, it depends on your listening system in your studio. Just buy a low-level quality speaker system and put as alternative system in your studio. Have some speakers here, very cheap.
If you want to say no name brands, but we know boxes like this that cost about 20 euros. The brand is very well known.
Yes, so you can switch between the main system and the other and listen to the differences. Another good way is to listen to low volume. Turn down the volume. And at very low levels, you can hear the balance between instruments. At high levels, you hear the sounds. At low levels, you hear the balance. So if you want to test if you are missing something, listen to low levels. Also, for example, some software, Wavelab, for example, has got a very useful plugin called Encoder Checker. It can simulate in real time different kind of conversions at different bit rates. So you can listen to 128 MP3 or 320 MPT or AAC and switch between the codecs in real time. The Encoder Checker has got also a blind mode. In the blind mode, you don't know what are you listening to. So just press the space bar and it switches between the codecs, but it doesn't tell you which one you are listening. And it's a good way to train your ears too.
Okay.
So there are.
I think there is another question, but please go on. We'll take it in a few minutes.
So the in-the-box processing, if made in a proper way, let you achieve results of a good level and pro level, sure. It depends on the errors you don't make. One common error is to use a wrong sample rate in the chain production. One of the most dangerous processing is sample rate conversions. So taking into account the final destination of the sound or the signal is if it's a compact disc, use the compact disc 41.1 or integer multiple, so 88.2 or 165.4. If you use the integer multiple, the sample rate conversions is less dangerous than from, for example, 48 to 44.1. This is very dangerous sample rate conversions because there is no multiple values between the samples, so you have to recalculate and quantize every sample. So then choose the right sample rate. Use the higher bit resolution during recording. Even if you have to print a 16-bit CD, record to 24 bits. because the 16-bit bits is good for reproduction, not for production. In production, you have to use a higher resolution, so you can make more accurate calculations. ITB in the box processing is calculations. So more bits, more digits, more accurate calculus. At the end of the production, you have to go down to 16 maybe. But in the meantime, you work at a high resolution, and the product is a pro level. And another important factor in the box processing is using of the floating point calculations.
Oh,
and
right. I have to ask you, I think, what the hell is floating point?
The floating point calculation is a way to represent numbers in various sections. So let's make some examples. I can use the board. So in digital domain, we have digits, binary digits, just like the digits we use when you make to the supermarket and pay and make calculations. But let's make some examples. For example, if we have if we have these three numbers, these four numbers, 4 digits, for example, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1,234. Well, we have to distinguish between these numbers, between these digits, which is important, less important, which is most important. So we can say the number 4 is less significant bit, because if I change by 1, 4, it becomes 5, and the number becomes 1,235. This digit is most important, most significant bit, because if I change it by 1, it becomes 2,234. So also in audio, in some processing digital audios, the most significant bit are used for high levels, and the less significant bit are used for represent low levels. Also, if we have a 2-digit number or 3-digit number, (999), with 3 digits, this is the higher number we can represent, unless I make a new law, a new regulation. Let's say I can say that the first 2 digits are the base, and the third is the exponent. In this case, I can use 3 digits to achieve a higher number, about 10 billion instead of 999. Or if I need a very small number, I can say that I can use the first digit as the base, the second digit as the exponent, and the third digit as a sign, plus or minus. In this case, I can achieve very little numbers with the negative exponent, and very big numbers with the positive exponent. This is the way floating point calculation works.
Do you have 1 second for
yes.
Okay. This Juan Carlos from Mexico City. Hi, Juan. When you are delivering, do you push as far as the material needs, or do you do your best work within a range around streaming target limits? I think did you understand the question?
Yes, I understand. I understood. The mastering process has become more complex with the streaming platforms and the broadcast regulations. Actually, I made a master for each single need. I do a mastering at minus 16 loops for iTunes, and the mastering at minus 14 loops for Spotify, and mastering at minus maybe 9 dB RMS for CD, and mastering for minus 23 loops for broadcasting. It depends on the platform you have to use the material. You can't make a master for every platform. It doesn't work. If you make a mastering at minus 9 loops for iTunes, the iTunes algorithm is called sound check. Automatically lower your mix by 7 dBs to put the level at minus 16. That is the iTunes standard. In this case, you lose 7 dB of dynamic range. In digital audio, every beat is 6 dBs of the dynamic range. So you lose 1 bit and more in that case. So if your song was 16 bit, it becomes 15 bits, lowering the level of on 7 dBs. I advise you to make a single master for each platform you need to use the material.
Okay.
And going back to floating point calculations. Yes, I should change the slide. I'm making.
When you talked about most significant and less significant bit, and you said that the lower bit numbers take care about the lower volume, and the high bit numbers take care of the high side of the higher side of the sound. Does that mean that some particularly heavy music can be undistinguished if mastered at 8-bit?
Yes.
If you push some heavy metal, like a heavy band of a very hard rock band, they can use only just 8 bits.
I don't think so. Actually, yes, the heavy metal or heavy loud music has got a low dynamic range, usually. So using 8 beats is not just relative to dynamic range. It's also relative to the calculation precision. The precision of 8-bit calculations it's about 256 levels. It's a little more than MIDI. When you use 24 bits for recording, you have 60 millions of steps in dynamic range. If you use 32 bits, you got 4 billion steps. So just always things as calculations. This is the key. The more accurate and precise is the calculation, the more high would be the quality of the final product, even if this product is a low dynamic range one. It doesn't mean you have to reduce the bit resolution.
I understand that, obviously, but mine was an extreme example, because a few years ago I compared two tracks of heavy music, and I just converted the 16-bit 4040.1 hertz in 8-bit 4040.1 hertz, and I played to some friends, and with this kind of music they couldn't tell the difference, and I wasn't telling to master records or songs at 8-bit. That should be clear.
Maybe if you listen to the middle of the song, maybe you can't hear, but at the end, with the fade out of some reverbs, you can hear the noise level, very, very high noise level. So that's the way you have to use an high sample rate. But let's make an example. We say we know that each bit is equals to 6 dB of dynamic range. So if we have in a mix two tracks at 0 dBs level each, and we had to mix these two tracks on the master fader. We have 0 dBs and 0 dBs. The double is 6 dBs of distortion. So we had to lower the level of the master or to lower the level of the tracks. If we lower the level of two tracks by 6 dB, we have 0 dB on the master and no distortion. But we lose 1 bit for each track. So if the track was 24-bit, it becomes 23. This happened just with two tracks. Just imagine what it happens with hundreds of tracks. For example, in a movie mix, if you lower one track by 12 dB, you lose 2 bits. By 18 dBs, you lose 3 bits, and so on. For each track, you lower the level. So the solution can be analog, using a summing bus, an external summing bus. But it implies two conversions. One conversion from digital to analog to into the summing box. Another conversion from analog to digital to get back into the computer. So the solution maybe is worse than the problem. In the MITB processing, we can use instead the floating point calculations. What does it mean? For example, if we have 24 bits resolution, we have 144 bits of dynamic range. Or if we have 16-bit, we have 96 dBs of dynamic range. So the higher number we can achieve with 16-bit is 65,536. And the converter can't give a higher number than the resolution bit that is got. So the problem seems also almost unsolvable. But if you use the floating point calculation, we can divide these bits in the groups and use this group for the base, for the exponent, for the sign of the value. This is a sample of the single precision 32-bit floating point calculation. There is a 23 Mantissa, 23-bit of Mantissa, the base, 8-bit of the exponent, 1 bit of the sign, total 32 bits. So 32 bits actually is 192 dBs of dynamic range if used in integer mode, in a classical mode calculation. But if we use the floating point calculation, we have a dynamic range given by the formula 2 to E. E is the number of the bits of the exponent, minus 1, to 6.02 dBs in dBs. So the resolution, the dynamic range of a single precision 32-bit floating point calculation is about 1,500 bit, more than 192, 1,500. Yes, from a mathematical point of view, the precision on the calculation is given by the Mantissa. And the Mantissa here is 23 bits. So theoretically, the 32 bits integer calculations give a higher precision than the floating point, but a lower dynamic range. In Wavelab, we can solve this problem too, because Wavelab can work at double precision, 64-bit floating point. In this way, we have 52 bits of Mantissa, 11 bits of exponent, and 1 bit of sign. It equals to 12,000 dBs and more of dynamic range. So using the floating point calculations, we can avoid the loss of precision and of dynamic range in the mixing and also in mastering, even in the calculations of the plugins resolutions. So that's the way I choose Wavelab for as a mastering platform for the book. Wavelab has got a double precision 64 floating point engine in audio calculations. Another parameter that is often underestimated is the DC offset of the signal. What DC offset is? The DC offset is a deviation, a shifting of the waveform. Now I change the slide. Up or down from the zero. When the zero crossing of the wave doesn't match the zero of the system, or the digital or analog zero, there is a shifting of the wave, of the signal, up or down, positive DC offset or negative DC offset. The DC offset reduces the dynamic range. It reduces the resolution of low frequencies at low levels, especially low frequencies. They got longer waveform. And it has compromised the resolution. So we have various ways to eliminate the DC offset, and I don't understand the reason why in a lot of production I hear today, there is a lot of DC offset when it is so simple to get rid of it, to eliminate it. Here I give you some example in Wavelab. I generate this signal for the sake of examples of study. Some of these files are really common to find. Some others are very rare, or also impossible, and I made just for example, exaggerating the settings. But this file, for example, has got, let's analyze the file, and this file has got 0 DC offset and infinite dynamic range. Infinite doesn't mean that infinite is the level of the DC offset. So there is no DC offset. It doesn't mean that the file has got an infinite dynamic range. This is the ideal level we should achieve at the end of the mastering chain. And this preserves the quality of the original file. This is the second file.
Do you have a window in front of this other window with a waveform of Wavelab? Because I think you shared a window of Wavelab, not the entire program.
Yes, yes.
No. Okay.
Yes, yes. I made it for this purpose. So this is second file. Let's analyze the second file. Zero 0.0016% of DC offset. With 3 zeros, we lose some dynamic range. The actual dynamic range that DC offset achieves is minus 95 dB or minus 96. What does it mean? It means that if we use this signal for a compact disc, it's okay. 96 dB is the 6 dB resolution of the CD. But if you have to use this file, this signal for a movie, for example, it's not enough. It should be 24-bit resolution. Right now it's 96, and it's not good. But we can keep it. This is the third example. Let's analyze the example. 0.16%. With just 0.16% of DC offset, the available dynamic range is 55 dB. It means less than a cassette tape recorder of the 70s. So you can use a Neumann
Marco, I'm
mic.
sorry, but they are advising us that floating windows are still not shown. And the floating windows don't show if you share the software.
Yes.
Sorry, guys.
That is it. The floating window. So I must. Okay. For now, just keep a faith. Just trust me. Because I had to reprogram the entire software to show the floating window. But it is with 1.16%, you have 55 dBs of dynamic range. So you had to correct this problem. There are several ways to correct this problem. One way is to generate an inverse voltage. So if the DC offset is positive, we generate a negative DC voltage and sum to the signal to get the DC offset cancelled. This is the case. And in Wavelab we can process the signal and remove DC offset. In this case, the software generates the inverse voltage. The file has been edited. You see the star, the asterisk. Then we analyze again, and now we have 0%. So in this way, we eliminate the DC offset. But this file is extreme. I made for purpose. There is no negative semi-wave, half wave, just positive. So this is a 50% of DC offset. The dynamic range here is 6 dB, just 6 dB. And we can correct the signal with the process used before. Correct, okay, and then we have the waveform corrected. But we can have a variable DC offset. This calculation is made on the average of the signal from the start, beginning to the end. What happens if we have a variable DC offset? For example, we have a track in a mix with the DC offset, and this track is automated. So these tracks change in levels during the mix. Also, the DC offset changes. So we can't eliminate a variable DC offset with the inverse voltage, because we eliminate sometimes, but when it's not present, we create DC offset. For example, this is exaggerate, but it can let you understand. We have a negative DC offset here and a positive DC offset here. So if we analyze with Wavelab, the analysis showed 0%, because the negative parts summed to the positive parts gives 0. But it's clear that this file has got some problems. So the inverse voltage here is not usable. So we have to consider another approach that is not in the amplitude domain as we did before, but in a frequency domain. For example, let's consider the file with 50% DC offset, and let's analyze the spectrum of the file in 3D. I don't know if you can see this window now.
I'm sorry, Marco, but I think that your software is not transmitting other than the wave windows.
Okay. Anyway, we can consider the DC offset as a zero frequency signal. DC, it means direct current. It does not oscillate. It does remain constant. So it is a signal at 0 Hertz frequencies. So we can remove the DC offset with a high-pass filter. So if I use an high-pass filter, maybe the Steinberg master rig, and then use just an high-pass 20 Hertz, maybe, and render in place. Okay, now it's okay. So high-pass filters can remove DC offset always. Inverse voltage sometimes. But this is a very important factor in the mastering processing and the mixing processing too. Okay. And if we have some question, or let's see.
No question right now.
Okay, let's talk about the dynamic range.
Some suggestions for a screen, but it's too late right now.
Okay.
Okay.
Let's talk about. Okay. Level, volume, dynamic range are some factors that are sometimes confused. The level is referred to the voltage of the signal in a specific time, in an instant. Every instant we can measure the level. The volume is measured in a time lapse. Can be half a second, can be 1 second, and is the average value, RMS, root mean square of the values. It gives us an idea of the loudness. It's not the loudness, but it gives us an idea of the loudness. The dynamic range is the. Let's make an example. If we listen to a rock concert, we have a very loud level, higher level, and a very loud too, soft level, during the low passages or high passages of the song. This loud level is achieved through PA systems, very powerful PA systems. And the reason to use these so powerful PA system, it's also because of the people in the arena. If you have 50,000 people and each of them screams, it's about 50,000 watts from the people screaming. So we have to use a more powerful PA system to cover this noise. But if we listen to a classical music concert, we have a loud level that is lower than the rock band. But we have a soft level that is very, very lower. This loud level will never match the level of the PA system. But if we see the difference between the two, this is the dynamic range. The dynamic range of classical concert is higher. The dynamic range of the rock concert, dynamic range is the difference between the higher and the lowest level. So we need more accurate sound system for playing back high dynamic range. And we can use cheap system to listen to low dynamic range. That's the reason why, maybe one of the reasons why, maybe in these days of loudness war, the mixes tend to sound louder and louder. I always advise the producers about this. But many of them maybe thinks that the louder, the better. But the louder is with that very little dynamic range, and it gives also fatigue, listening fatigue. It's not comfortable listening. and it doesn't make sense in our world in which we have very high resolution hardware producing a very low dynamic range product. This is not an evolution, it's an involution of the audio technique. So just
and it doesn't consider that the customer has a volume knob also.
Yes, just turn up the volume if you want louder. And then this is also, this gives you the punch feeling. When you have low dynamic range, you have no punch. You have loud, but loud is not punch. Punch is the difference between loud and silence. And this is the punch when you jump on the chairs, when you see. But with constant loud level, you have no punch. You have no dynamic range. Anyway, the mastering engineer has to be able to achieve higher loudness levels without sacrificing too much the sound. And the book has got 100 pages on compressions technique, in which you will learn to use upward compressions, downward compressions, multi-band, parallel, MS processing to achieve the level you want without sacrificing too much the sound.
Okay, I think it's now time to tell everyone where they can find the demo of the book. It's okay, or you have to say something else?
No. If we had some question, okay, but
I don't think there are questions, so I don't see them. And so the book is available on Amazon, as the speaker said from the beginning of this video, and also on contemponet.com. That has an English section, so you have to read books. Click over there, and there are all the English books of the Contemponet. The demo is about 100 pages, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
And you can see the structure of the book, how the information is spreaded, and how the book works. As Marco said, the book is can be read by different kind of students. Can be read from a newbie, from a novice, and because you can read it from the first page to the last page as a school book. You can jump to particular arguments you're seeking. But the most important thing is that it's full of examples, practical examples. There are files to be downloaded. When you buy the book, you have the instructions where to download the files, and it can be used in a classroom with a teacher, and or at home, and all the levels between home and academic level, like university or conservatory, etc. And you have to add something. Do you have something to add, Marco?
Yes, I hope you will like this book and you use it to achieve your professional level in mastering processing. I'm sure you can do it, and I'm sure this book will help you and will conduct you on the way to professional mastering.
Okay. I see it's about, it's more than an hour that we are talking. If you want to, if there are any questions, guys, or we can stop it here. What do you think, Marco?
Okay, just say bye to everybody. And if you get a book, and if you want to write me some feedback, you have an email dedicated to the book to write to.
Okay.
Bye.
Guys, nice to meet you, and see you next time. and have a nice day, evening, or night, whatever time zone you are. See you.
Bye.
Bye.